Guys. Okay, I'm live on YouTube. Sorry about those who were on the call earlier, couldn't see me. I hope you can see me now. So I am going to be talking about a interesting topic today, a topic that I get a lot of questions on, and a topic that a lot of you boutique owners, especially new entrepreneurs, struggle with. And so today we'll be talking about pricing for profit, the strategies for setting prices and boosting margins for boutiques and fashion brands. A lot of you guys need this training. I see it in my coaching students. I see it in the people that I don't coach, just in general. So I'm really excited to really dive into this because a lot of you new boutique owners think you're too expensive and don't know whether you're too expensive or not charging enough. And so today we're going to break it down. I'm going to show you exactly how to add in your pricing, how to set your pricing, and how to approach it and what to calculate. So this is the training of all trainings in regards to pricing. Now, comment so I know who's here. I know I have some viewers in YouTube, so if you could just comment down your name, I want to know who's on. And if you're on Instagram Live, go ahead and comment down below who is on. I love to know who's on. And if you see me looking up here, is because I have Instagram. My phone is recording. Hey, Maria. Maria's on YouTube. If you see me down here, it's because I'm looking at my YouTube. So I'm streaming on both. So guys, I'm like double streaming, repurposing content to the max. So make sure that as we go through this training, it can get a little technical, especially because, it does involve some math and some terms. So make sure that you are asking questions. If you have a pen and paper handy, go ahead and grab that because it's going to help you see the formulas, and then you'll be able to write down the formulas. So this is probably going to be a two-part series. There's definitely a lot to cover here that we need to discuss. But essentially, after this training, you should be able to know what pricing strategy you want to use, whether you're charging too much, and basically how to set your prices so that you can get a profit margin for your boutique. Okay, so I'm just going to dive in. I feel like a lot of new boutique owners don't charge enough. This happens even with my coaching students. I go on and I see these boutiques and they charge $20 for sandals. And I'm like, how is that possible? That means that if you want to make a margin, you probably paid like $5 to $7 for these sandals. And the reality is a lot of times these boutique owners paid $15 for the sandals and are charging $20, and they think, okay, I'm making like $5. But in reality, you're not. You're losing every time you sell an item. So I want to talk about the importance of pricing, right? And so it's not, because I think a lot of times we don't think about the importance of pricing, how it affects our business, because ultimately pricing determine if you go out of business in a month and will determine if you thrive for the next 3 to 5 years. So first off, pricing impacts the financial health of your business. Straight up. If you have a profit, you have a healthy, financially healthy business. If you don't, you don't, right? Having the proper pricing allows you to cover your costs. And I'm not talking about just your product costs. I mean, all of the costs, like your labor, your expenses throughout, right? Having the right prices allows you to earn a profit, like actually make money after everything's been paid off. You've paid off yourself, literally make money for your business. It allows you to remain competitive in the market, remain competitive in the sense that you have the funds to automate certain things. You have the funds to keep up with technology. So who else is on YouTube? Comment your name down below. I'd love to know who is on. I know Maria's on YouTube. I see someone else is on. So profits are actually crucial if you see yourself having a business that's going to be sustainable for years to come, right? Like, of course you do. You're not going to start a business and just say like, I only want this business for a year. Like, obviously we all want longevity. And in order for you to see your business thrive for the years ahead, you need to be profitable, right? And But most importantly, high profit allows you to reinvest in yourself and in your business, right? You can buy new and better equipment, especially as technology changes. You're able to process orders quickly. You're able to upgrade your systems, right? You're able to maybe expand to a warehouse. Like if you're working out of your bedroom or your basement, and as your boutique grows, you can expand into a warehouse. You can't do this without profit, right? You get to grow your team, right? Like hire people, expand your product line, add in more products. And honestly, just remain financially stable so that when you wake up, you're not stressing about money. And when you go to sleep, you're not stressing about money. So I want to know who else is on here on YouTube. If you could just add a comment. So some of the key things that I'm going to talk about in this training are going to be understanding your costs, how to factor in overhead and operating expenses, and setting prices to ensure healthy profits. Now, don't get turned off by all these concepts, overhead, operating expenses. I'm going to explain what they are. They're really easy, really simple. And if you have any questions, just stop and ask. Okay, so let's dive into first understanding your costs. So, what I see a lot of the common mistake that I see is when boutique owners, clothing line owners, when they are pricing their product, they think about, okay, my product costs, it costs me, let's say you buy wholesale. This dress wholesale costs $20. So I'm going to charge $30, right? Like you think you're making money, right? Like, oh, yes, like obviously 30 is bigger than 20, so I've got a margin. But the reality is a lot of boutique owners don't account for all of their costs. So what is included in the cost? And the first step to really ensuring that you set yourself up for healthy profit margins and setting up the right price is understanding your true product cost. And it entails more than just the product itself. So here's what it entails. So there are different costs associated. So there's the cost of producing the clothes. There's the material cost of the clothes. There's the labor. There's shipping costs, right? So if we were to break down product costs, right, the actual product, these are the costs associated with the clothing, whether you are buying wholesale or if you're making your own clothes. So for those of you who joined on Instagram, I'm talking about how to price your products for profit. So product costs associated with buying wholesale or making your own clothes, you got to know your product costs, right? So for example, if you're producing your own clothes, like Maria, I know you're creating your own collection, you're not buying wholesale, you're creating your own clothes. So your costs of producing items are going to be the actual materials that you use, the labor, the packaging costs, down to the mailing slip that you put in your shipping, down to the poly mailers, the bag, the hang tags, the brand labels. I like to include shipping costs to the customer as well. That's all going to be in your product costs, right? And I'm going to dive deeper into product costs in just a second. But then that's the product costs, right? And then there's operating costs, which essentially these are expenses associated with running your business, but it doesn't directly touch the product. So these are things like hosting a website, buying office materials, covering marketing costs, paying for your email marketing system, right? Like that $20 monthly fee you have to pay, paying for your domain every year. Those are going to be operating costs. These are costs that you have to pay to operate, but it's not tied into your product. And then there's another cost called overhead costs. And now these are more like, these are indirect costs associated with the business. These are things like rent, utilities, insurance, your business annual registration fee. These are more like, okay, these are more like up top, right? So really what you need to know is product costs, operating costs, overhead costs, right? And so as an online boutique, you won't really have much overhead costs, like rent, utilities, and insurance. Like you probably won't have that for your items. You might have insurance on your inventory, but you probably won't have rent or utilities. Okay, so how to price your products. How do I price it if you're a clothing brand? So here are some examples of how different fashion brands calculate their product costs. So the first thing we want to do is we want to understand the cost of our product. What is the true cost? And then we're going to take it from there. So for example, if you are a clothing line, let's say you're a boutique owner and you sell handmade dresses. You're a fashion designer just like Maria is here. What you're going to include in your product cost are materials, things like fabric, the thread, buttons, the labor costs. You can capture that per the hour. How much you spent cutting and sewing the items. And I like to include shipping costs, the postage of materials to the customer and packaging materials, so poly mailers, hang tags, shipping costs. I like to include this because if you offer free shipping, if you don't offer free shipping, then this can be a separate cost, and that cost is transferred to the customer upon checkout, so you don't have to include that in your price. I like to offer free shipping because it creates an incentive for people to buy online, and I incorporate shipping costs in there, and I do an average of how much it costs to ship that product. So that's what you would include in your product cost if you are a fashion designer producing your own clothes. Now, if you are a boutique owner, right, you're buying wholesale, you're not producing your clothes, what I would include in your product is the wholesale product pricing, like the actual product, how much it costs per piece, the shipping costs, right? So when you order something, say for example, you order something on Fashion Go and it's being delivered from California. Say you paid $100 for 5 dresses. You say, okay, each dress is 20 bucks. But if they charge you $20 to ship those 5 dresses, then your real total is $120. And there it took like about $25 per dress. It's no longer 20. So you got to incorporate shipping costs. And this is one thing a lot of boutique owners don't do. They don't incorporate the shipping costs, what they're being charged for them to ship the item to themselves or to their warehouse. So make sure that you are capturing that. What I like to do to capture shipping costs per product is, if it costs $20 to ship, just divide that by the number of pieces. So 20 divided by 5, right? So that would be your shipping cost per product. The other thing you want to include in your product price, if you're offering free shipping, is shipping to your customer. How much does it cost to ship on average this dress that weighs, I don't know, a pound? Let's say it's $8, right? And then packaging materials. So the poly mailer, the hang tag, the little slip, if you have a card with a code, you want to add that in. Everything, even to the tissue paper that you use. Take the price of the tissue paper. How many sheets of tissue paper are there in a package? And divide that by the number of sheets that you use per package. Like everything down to the tape, like everything, right? Because if not, you are leaking, you're not accounting for your costs, and you're leaving money on the table by not capturing this. So what I recommend is because it's not just the product cost, it's the shipping, it's everything else, it's the packaging. So what I recommend is starting an Excel page. I love Excel. Starting an Excel page and recording all the materials. If you're producing the clothes, capture all the materials, how much it costs. If you're buying wholesale, make sure that you are capturing the cost of the item, plus the shipping, plus how much it costs to package. And if you're offering free shipping, add the shipping price within the price of the product. So at the end of the day, that gives you your price, which is in other words called cost of goods sold. That's it. It's just the true cost of the product itself. So like, for example, the Starbucks coffee, it would include the coffee plus the cup, this little sleeve here, plus like this lid, even like down to the sticker that they paste on here. That is going to be the product of the cost itself. And that's it, right? So I'm going to stop here. This is the first phase into identifying your price and setting your price for profit margin. Now, I'm going to stop here. I know we have some people on Instagram. I know I've got some people on YouTube. Are there any questions about finding your product price and your COGS, cost of goods sold? Any questions? And while you do that, I'm going to take a sip of water. Okay, I don't see anything coming in. If you have any questions, just go ahead and ask. So now you have your cost of goods sold, right? Now what? How do I set my price? Well, there's 2 different ways that you can set pricing, or 2 different strategies that a lot of fashion brands use, boutiques, clothing brands, right? So the first costing approach that you can do is use cost plus pricing. And the other one is called value-based pricing. So we've got 2 different pricing strategies, right? So the first one, cost plus pricing, It involves adding a markup to your cost, right? In order to set a price. So it's literally just adding a markup. So, for example, the fashion standard for a markup for clothes in the fashion industry is generally 2.5 times 3 of the product cost. So you would take the product cost. Um, let's say a dress costs you $40 wholesale, or it costs you $40 to produce. What you do on average, fashion brands, they do times 2.5 or times 3, and that's your markup. That's how you know. So like if you have a dress that costs you $40, you don't want to sell it for 50 because you're not capturing a healthy margin that is going to cover enough for you to even run the business, right? So the industry general average is 2.5 to 3. So you can do 2.6, 2.7, 2.8, 2.9, or 3. So whatever number it is times 2.5, etc., or 2, 3. I like to do times 3. I like to have a healthy margin. Sometimes a lot of people like to go down to 2.5. It just really depends on the item. But I like to go times 3 because I want to have a healthy margin. I don't want to have to worry about money. I want to make sure that my business is running effectively and that I pay my people well, that I pay myself well, right? So that's what cost plus pricing is basically taking your product price and multiplying it by whatever standard you're going to use times 2.5. So for example, if your cost of a dress is $40, you should sell it for anywhere between 100, which is at 2.5, or 120, which is at times 3. So your price for this $40 dress would be 100 to 120. And this is to ensure that you're capturing a healthy margin for your business. But it doesn't stop there. And I want to talk to you about the second pricing, value-based pricing. So this involves setting a price on the perceived value of your product. So what I mean by that is, say for example, you are making dresses that are, sourced from sustainable materials, produced locally. Let's say your business is mission backed. You have a mission for your brand. Perhaps you're giving back to charity. You are able to set a higher price to reflect the value of these qualities, right? Out of, supporting a mission, empowering women, right? So like whatever that is, hiring only women, hiring local people, paying people a fair wage, like that has a value. And this is where a lot of you get stuck. This is where a lot of entrepreneurs struggle. A lot of new boutique entrepreneurs are so fixated on the number, right? You guys tend to go for cost plus, and you don't see the value in the product that you provide. You don't see the value in the problem you're trying to solve. When you are a mission-based business, the problem that you are solving is bigger than the product itself. It's something bigger, right? Like if you're instilling confidence in women, you can charge more than 20 bucks for a dress, girl. If you are providing a safe space for women who are plus size, for women to feel welcome, for women to have options to look good, who generally when they go to other boutiques are not given the same treatment, don't have options because they don't have their size available, you could charge for that. You could charge more than $30 for a dress. And so where a lot of students, where a lot of my coaching clients get stuck and new entrepreneurs is you don't see the value in your product. You don't account for the mission and what you're selling. Because at the end of the day, if you are establishing a good brand, like a good brand with a good mission, you are not selling clothes. You are selling your mission, right? So for me, my mission with everything that I do is to empower women to follow their dreams of starting a business. So even when I had my clothing brand, I wasn't just selling dresses. Like me having this clothing brand was a testament that dreams do come true. You can start a business and make money from it. So what I was selling was the women, empowering women to follow their dreams. Like that's bigger than me just selling dresses. So when you look at your pricing, I challenge you to consider the value-based approach. And I feel like a lot of you don't. A lot of you are like, oh, it's $20, so I got to sell it for $60 or less. And like you don't take into account the value that you bring, right? And the value that you bring is going to be derived from your mission statement, right? Your values, what you're about, right? So if you're providing, again, a safe space for people, you can charge more for that because you're not just a regular store, right? You're not just buying a product, you're buying into a mission. It's bigger than that, it's community. I get really, really passionate about this because I feel like most entrepreneurs, especially female entrepreneurs starting on their boutiques, they don't charge enough and they're losing money. So, for example, let me see here. I want to show you guys some of the brands that actually use cost plus pricing. This is good to know. Cost plus pricing and value-based pricing. So cost plus pricing, again, it's like taking the price, adding the markup, that's it. So one of the brands that does that is H&M. So H&M is a fast fashion brand. Hope you guys know about it, but they offer trendy clothing at affordable prices. So their whole goal is to offer affordable prices. So H&M, their stuff is produced overseas, and if you do some research, some of their stuff is produced by workers who don't have healthy working conditions. Whatever, I'm not going to get into that. But H&M, their goal is affordable. So they're going to try to be as cheap as possible, right? And that's their strategy, and that's totally fine. However, they use this strategy, cost plus, to keep their prices low. Because if they do value based, the prices would be higher, and then they wouldn't fulfill their mission of being affordable. Now, here's the thing. A lot of you guys keep your prices low, just do the markup because you feel like people are not going to buy from you. And you feel like people are not going to buy from you because you don't think that you're good enough. There is a strong association with your mindset and your prices. So if you think, oh, this is too expensive and your shirt's like $30, it's not, your shirt is not too expensive. There are other brands out there that charge like $1,000 for a top. Like, it's not that your bodysuit costs $30, it's too expensive. Is that you don't think you are worth it. And that's when mindset comes in. And mindset comes to the forefront, comes to the surface when we talk about pricing. And it's really interesting. So, if you think about, you don't think you're good enough, or that no one will pay this much, or if people tell you you're too expensive, or if you think you're too expensive, that's BS. And it has everything to do with your mindset and you not recognizing the value that you bring to your audience, because you are bringing a value, you are solving a problem. Right? So H&M. Levi's also uses cost plus pricing, the denim brand, they use that. Again, it's very simple, and this is a good fit for you. Again, if you are like H&M, you want to keep prices low. Like, it works, right? And it assures that you have a margin. But if that's not your approach, I recommend using a value-based approach. So some of the examples to give you some fashion brands that use value-based approach. And we all know this one. Now, to kind of refresh you, value-based pricing is determined based on perceived value. So it's not necessarily the cost. It's like, what is it value? So my favorite is Chanel. They use a value-based pricing approach. So they really rely on their reputation and exclusivity to really be able to charge $5,000-$10,000 for a dress. Now, if you really were to crunch down the numbers, pretty sure the actual cost of the product is no more than $200. And I'm being like conservative here. So even if you did the times 3, it would be $600. Yet they charge $5,000 plus. That is value-based pricing. It's recognizing the value that you bring to your audience, distinguishing yourself from your mission, solving a problem, and pricing based on the value. Another brand is Patagonia, the outdoor brand. They have commitment to sustainability, social responsibility. They're very green. And so with that, they appeal to customers that are willing to pay a premium, people who really care about the environment, people who want sustainably sourced materials, people who love outdoors. They're willing to pay a premium for that. And they use value-based pricing. And so their stuff is priced higher. I don't want to use the word expensive because I think it's relative. But their pricing is more than what the product costs, like actually costs. So they take it one step above. And this is what I recommend for you guys. I actually like to use a blend of two. So when I had my clothing brand, I would say I would do the ×3 markup. And then I would look at that number and say, does this number reflect my brand? Does it reflect the value that I'm bringing? Because even if you do a ×3, right? Even if, say, you have a dress that's $40 and you do it ×3, it's 120. But say you find another cute dress on wholesale that's $10 and you ×3 it, that's $30. Just because it's $30 doesn't mean you have to charge $30. You can still charge 80, 100 based on the value, making sure obviously that the quality is there and that it's representative of your brand and consistent with everything else that you offer. But just because you do ×3 and it's $30 doesn't mean you have to charge $30. You can charge 89, 100, right? So I like to use a combination of both. I like to use the cost plus pricing as a way to gauge, like, this is the minimum that I should be charging. And then I take a step back and say, okay, what's the value? And does that align with the value? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I increase my prices, and there's nothing wrong with that. So in general, like industry standards, fashion, if you've ever like, oh, what's the average? What's the average? So pricing can vary widely depending on your brand. Again, if you're Chanel versus H&M, different pricing strategy. But if you're going to use cost plus, the markup typically is going to be whatever the price is times 2.5, anywhere from 2.5 to 3%. So you could do 20 times 2.5 or 20 times 3, whatever that is. Anywhere in between is a good spot. You could charge more than that if you want. Chanel does. It works for them, but you have to make sure that your brand isn't aligned with that pricing strategy. Okay, so we've talked about understanding your product cost, right? Your COGS, cost of goods sold, and then understanding the markup. So if you're going to use cost plus pricing, you take your cost of goods sold and you times it by 2.5 or 2.3. Now, if you are using a value-based pricing approach, you take your cost and you look at the value. And obviously you want to make sure that it's more than the ×3, because otherwise you're going to be losing money. So I like to use cost plus pricing as a way, as like a minimum benchmark. So whatever it is ×3, that's the minimum benchmark. Now, I talked about other different costs associated with running a business. So things like marketing, rent, if you're a brick and mortar, utilities, office materials. When we just look at the cost of the product, we're just looking at the cost of the product. We're not looking at the overhead. We're not covering our website. We're not covering marketing materials. So how do we account for all those other costs? So this is how fashion brands factor in overhead, because you want to factor that into your price. You want to factor in those overhead and operating expenses, basically everything else that is not the product. So how do you factor that in? Because it's got to be paid from somewhere, right? So to factor in overhead, operating costs, there is a formula that you add on. So just like a markup, there's a certain percentage that you add on. So for example, on average, this is just based on average, most fashion brands charge anywhere, add on like another markup to cover these costs, add anywhere from 3 to 15%. Now, let me explain. On average, operating costs typically account for 10%. So if you were to add your price, so for example, in the price of a dress, right? If you were to add, so you have your price 100 and you add 10%, that price should account for your rent, utilities. And marketing expenses usually is anywhere from 3 to 5%. So if you have a brick and mortar, if you have, high costs, if you have rent, if you have insurance, then I would charge 15%. However, you're an online boutique, many of you are, and you don't have the rent of a store. So you don't need to charge that much. You don't have that much rent. You don't have utility bills. Perhaps you don't have a big team yet. You don't have to pay for all of these wages. So on average, 10% captures rent and utilities of the operating costs, and 3 to 5 captures marketing expenses. So as an online boutique with no rent, no utilities, you can add on that 3 to 5%. It doesn't have to be that 10. So I'm going to stop here. I know this might get confusing. So for example, let me walk you through an example. So I have a dress that's $40. And if I do the markup, I'm going to do the cost plus. So I'm going to do times 3. I'm going to get the markup. So 40 times 3 is 120. So that's the price of a dress. But I still have an incorporated overhead costs, marketing costs, etc. So as an online boutique with no rent, I'm going to include 5%. And that should cover marketing, business expenses, office materials, etc. Now, if you were a brick and mortar and you do have rent, then you would charge another, it would be 15% instead of 5. So this $40 dress with a times 3 markup plus 5% in overhead costs, which is only $6, is a total of $126. So this dress that costs $40 wholesale or $40 to produce should at minimum be priced at $126. And so what I want you to see here is many of you are not charging enough. How many of you are not charging enough? Comment down below. A lot of times people don't factor in the overhead expenses. They don't factor in the markup. Like I have people who are telling me that they pay $40 for a dress and they're selling it for $60. I'm like, you're not even paying for your own labor. Every time that you sell, you're losing money because they don't account for packaging materials. They don't account for shipping. They don't account for the shipping, the shipping that it takes the wholesaler to send it to their house or their warehouse. So they're losing money. And it's like, you don't want to let anything leak. And this is why it's important to have an Excel spreadsheet and capture everything. I literally capture everything to the penny. To ensure that, first of all, I'm capturing everything and I want to make a healthy margin. So I know I've said a lot. We talked about how to determine the price of your costs, the real cost of your product, which is more than just the product, as we talked about. We discussed how to determine your markup, right? And we talked about how to incorporate your other overhead costs of the business so that you can actually pay to run your business into your price, right? And that in all gives you your minimum retail price. This is going to be the minimum price that ensures that you are priced for profit, that will keep you ongoing for business for years to come, that will allow you to invest in your business, invest in equipment, and invest in yourself. So I'm going to stop here. Next week, I'll talk a little bit more about pricing, but does anyone have any questions? Now, I'm always here for you. So if you have any questions about like the math or any questions like, hey, I don't know if this is the right price, just shoot me a message. I'm always happy to help. And I just want to let you know that the trainings have moved over to YouTube. So just go to my YouTube homepage channel every Thursday at 1 p.m. Central, and you'll see some live video. And if I have technical difficulties, just give me a couple minutes or just hop on Instagram Live and you can watch it there as well. Make sure that if you're on my YouTube, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. That way you'll get notified when I actually go live. And I know who's actually watching my videos. If you have any questions about the Boutique Bootcamp program, where I essentially help women start their boutiques, identify their missions, like just from start to finish, then DM me boutique or comment down below boutique, and I'll be happy to reach out to you with more information. Now, I really hope that you guys took a lot out of this training. Pricing strictly relates to mindset. And I want you to know that if you're struggling with pricing, you're probably struggling with mindset. And that's something that I always say we need to tackle first. You need to identify your limiting beliefs. Oh, I'm not good enough. That directly is going to translate into your prices. You're going to think, oh, I can't charge that much, or that's too expensive. And it's going to directly impact the health of your business. So I hope you guys found this training helpful, and I will see you guys next Thursday. Bye, guys. All right.